Hi guys, welcome back. This is Matt Chat episode 351 featuring an interview with Mr. Daniel Doan, the designer of Sanctuary RPG and Overture, as well as the co-founder of Blackshell Media, a game that specializes in the sort of indie retro titles that guys like us can't seem to get enough of. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff to cover here, especially if you are interested in roguelikes or have a game that you might actually want to get on Steam yourself one day. Mr. Doan is also a game consultant. He's got a lot of great advice here for you. Anyway, there's a lot of stuff here, so without further ado, here is Mr. Daniel Doan. Hi folks, I am here with Daniel Doan. He's the developer of Sanctuary RPG as well as Overture, and the co-founder of Blackshell Media, an indie game publishing and marketing studio. Got a lot of very interesting products I think you'll want to hear more about. How are you doing today, Daniel?
Great. Thank you so much for having me. You know, it's like awesome to be able to be on this show and be able to just talk about the thing that I love the most, which is game development and making sure that more gamers more gamers get to experience the things that game developers make. So,
well, it's my pleasure, Daniel. Before we get into the games. Before we get into Sanctuary and Overture, I wanted to get you to talk a little bit about your background, sort of how you learned how to do all this stuff, and what made you want to open up your own or co-found a publishing house.
Sure. So I started in game design a long time ago when I was I think I was in middle school, and I started modding games in. I think back then it was like Warcraft 2, Age of Empires, StarCraft 1, and basically just like creating custom maps. And I would make like a bunch of RPGs inside of other games, and I would try to market those. And basically it was just me just experimenting with game design. And I would also design board games, and I would play test them with my friends at school and such. And then after that, I basically just went on and designed more games as like kind of like a hobby thing. But then when college came around, I took a programming class, and I was like, wow, like I could actually make a game that wasn't just like a mod inside some other game, but a game that was my own. So I started on Sanctuary RPG, and I basically got like a huge community to play it. And then after Sanctuary RPG, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And so I actually made another game called Overture, and then I was like, whoa, like this game is also like kind of like a cult hit, So I formally then decided to pivot towards trying to market games, because I was like, wow, this is awesome. I might be good at this.
So you were taking a C++ class there in college, or what kind of programming language was it?
Yeah. I took an intro to programming class, and that was C++, and I was just blown away by how both easy and difficult it was to make games. Easy being that you can make a really simple game with really simple code, but at the same time it's infinitely complex when it comes to like the scale of game and the game systems.
You often hear from us students here. We have a video game design club, and most of them have this idea of making an RPG. And I don't think they really appreciate necessarily the attention to detail that you really need to complete an RPG, with all of the different sorts of mechanics and the balancing issues, and there's just a lot of sort of tedious aspects to it, right?
Yeah. What I do like though is that it's so easy to like get started on something.
So what drew you to the roguelike? Did you play Rogue or NetHack, Lauren, any of those?
I actually played NetHack while I was doing research into the genre. I actually grew up playing the Diablo series, and that series was heavily inspired by games such as NetHack and Rogue. And I was just so with Sanctuary RPG, I basically tried to recreate the Diablo series, but in text-based form, which is kind of, I guess, going back to the old days of roguelikes.
So, did you ever play that Diablo roguelike?
Oh yeah. I actually haven't played that game.
Oh, I thought that was fun. So, what are your thoughts? I noticed some of the reviews that were posted about Sanctuary talked about Dwarf Fortress as well, sort of. And if you thought Dwarf Fortress was a little too too hard or too much to get into, why don't you try Sanctuary? I mean, do you see a connection between? What do you think about Dwarf Fortress first? And were you inspired at all by that one?
So I actually have only played maybe 10 minutes of Dwarf Fortress. Reason being is I tried to get into it and I was like, whoa, this is so complicated. And I was actually reading this huge rule book or beginner's guide to Dwarf Fortress, and I was like, this is this is like a huge book, and I don't know if I have time to actually dig too deep into it. So I was like, this is kind of intimidating. So I actually don't have an opinion on Dwarf Fortress because I've never actually truly delved into it.
Yeah, it seems I'm the same way. It seems like you need a college degree almost to really get into that game, but. It really has some passionate fans. There's a lot of people here that want me to cover it at some point. And maybe I'll eventually sit down and, you said it's a book I can read, I guess, a textbook.
Yeah.
Prep for it. So let's get more into Sanctuary. This is described on the site as a humorous and strategic turn-based dungeon-crawling ASCII adventure. Drawing heavy inspiration from roguelikes and Japanese RPGs. Offering robust action RPG-inspired combat system. So I was a little confused. I didn't realize there had been the black. I guess it's the black edition is a more recent one, right? A commercial release, but it was you had released it earlier. Right? When did it actually come out?
So I actually I worked on it late 2012, and basically worked on it for 2 to 3 months, and then I released this early alpha of it. And on Reddit, and people really loved it, and they were like, "Oh, just keep on updating it, please," And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." So then I kept on working on it, and then I think I formally announced the release of the classic version. I think it was 1 year after that, and then after that, I was like, what if I could turn this into a Steam release by adding basically twice the content and overhauling the art, because the free version was using this free art that was found on the internet, but the paid version I basically hired a team of people on revenue share and basically just overhauled everything and made it so that it was a brand new experience for the Steam audience.
Yeah, I gotta say, I've played a lot of these ASCII games from back in the day, and this one to me, I was really impressed with the quality of that ASCII art. I know a lot of the guys that watch this program will probably be impressed as well if they're, because just because it's ASCII doesn't mean there's no technique or artistry involved. Obviously, I'm just wondering what kind of reaction are you getting from people that maybe haven't played the old Rogue and are not familiar with ASCII games. Do they look at this and wonder what the heck is this, or are they curious, or what kind of reaction do you get?
So initially, my friends and family didn't really get the game. They were like, oh, what is this, like something in the 1980s? But it's interesting that I've actually noticed that our audience is kind of a mix between people who grew up playing Rogue and NetHack and stuff, and also people who are I guess young kids who have never played those old games, but they're like, whoa, this is totally new to me because I've never seen this before. But design wise, I basically tried to make it as, I guess, user friendly as possible, and intuitive, so that players who aren't used to the old, ways to like navigate menus and stuff could easily, pick up and play Sanctuary RPG. Because I know like I think NetHack and like a few other old games, like like when it comes to the user interface, like it feels a little bit clunky.
A little bit.
Yeah. So I try to remedy that as much as possible for Sanctuary.
Yeah, I was thinking of that playing your game, and I remember it seemed like was it Rogue, but like almost every letter of the keyboard had a different function that you just had to know. Like Q for quaff, potion, things of that sort. I noticed another interesting difference was I was kind of struck by how those older games you'd be in a sort of a maze, like rooms, and you could see the character on the screen and the monsters. Whereas with the Sanctuary, you're kind of just saying, I want to go, to this to the bandit camp, right? And it takes so many turns to get there. That's kind of an interesting design decision, I think. Why did you set it up that way? Sure.
So I kind of well, actually, the first iteration of the game, it was basically just a bunch of enemy fights over and over again. So you would load the game. You would hit fight, and then you would fight like a randomized enemy, and then you would get gold and experience, and then it would take you back to the menu where you would have to hit fight again. And then so that was the core game loop for quite a while. And when it came to expanding on the content, I was like, okay, well, I have this core game loop of just battles. Why don't I just contextualize them? So I added areas, different areas, and then I added like a town that players could visit, in between fights to just explore and just talk to people and just truly get that RPG-like experience that many roguelikes don't really have, since like a lot of roguelikes, it's all about just dungeon crawling and then getting loot. But I kind of wanted like a true RPG experience almost.
Yeah, I think it's got more of a story than a lot of those, a lot of the roguelikes I've played with the matron? and
Yeah.
The little cutscenes that play out at the beginning. It's a lot of fun. What do you think are the trade-offs? This is something I've always been kind of curious about in terms of roguelikes and procedural games with procedural generation. What are the trade-offs with going that way versus just making static maps and sort of having all the rooms and everything planned out in advance?
I think development time and I guess I guess there's 2 points. One, it's development time. If I had manually design levels and stuff, that would take like a lot longer, and like especially for like a limited budget and like a limited team, that's quite taxing. So with procedural generation, it's easier on the developer. And also, I think it's much more fun for the developer to play a game that's procedurally generated, because if the developer is designing everything, then it's kind of pointless for the developer to actually go in and try to enjoy it. But with a roguelike, the game sometimes has different quirks that the developer won't even realize. Mm-hmm. So I guess it's a lot more fun for the developer to go and experiment in a game that's more procedural.
Yeah, I like that insight. So you want to make a game that's fun for you to play, as well as fun for you to play, as well as hopefully make some money, right? Fun for everybody. Another thing that I was really impressed about the game was how you did the sort of in-game tutorial, I guess. Sort of walking people through how to play this, because it's actually a pretty complicated game. A crafting system and. Even the combat, I'm used to these roguelikes where you're just hitting like K for kill, maybe a direction. And you have all kinds of chains of attacks and finishing moves and links and all this. It's a pretty sophisticated system. So I mean, how did you do that? How did you sort of create this in-game tutorial that wouldn't be so obtrusive and sort of cumbersome?
I definitely drew a lot of inspiration from games. This is kind of blasphemous, but like Call of Duty or something, where like the very first battle is kind of like a tutorial, or I guess a Call of Duty, it'd probably be like the environment where, you know, it's like, oh, you're gonna travel through like a corridor and there's like a ledge up top, you know, press C to crouch. So I guess it's kind of like I wanted the player to be eased into the game and not have to like really read like read too long of like this like
Fortress textbook.
Yeah, you know, before starting, and you know what better way to contextualize that than just explaining it as the player actually plays. So I think the best tutorials disguise themselves as part of the actual game.
Of course, another nice thing is that soundtrack, and I think you got the same composer for both games, right? Did I read that right? Raphael Longani Smith.
Yeah, he's a brilliant composer. Brilliant.
Yeah, where'd you find him? I really like his stuff, and I noticed you can buy the soundtrack separately too if you just want to enjoy those.
Yeah, I found him. I think I found him on. I think I found him on Reddit, I believe. I think I got introduced to him by like a mutual friend.
Are you selling lots of those soundtracks?
I believe so. I haven't looked at the soundtrack sales in a while.
All right, so your next game after Sanctuary was Overture, right?
Yeah.
It came out in, I guess it was, I noticed it was published on Steam on January 1st, 2015. This is an action-adventure roguelike, so still roguelike, but quite a bit different than Sanctuary, at least in terms of the way it looks and plays. And you say that one draws heavy inspiration from Diablo. I can definitely see that. Realm of the Mad God, Zelda, and The Binding of Isaac. So I saw one of the reviewers described it as a bullet hell meets roguelike. So
Yeah.
I thought that fits, I guess. So what were your thoughts, when you're making this game? Obviously you wanted something quite different than the previous, than Sanctuary, So
I kind of wanted Overture to be kind of like Sanctuary, but kind of like action RPG instead of turn based.
It's definitely got the action. It's hard. Can you get past that first room? I mean, I've been stuck on that one. I was like determined to get through that thing. Wow.
Like what I wanted out of Overture was was a game that was like super challenging, like so challenging that it takes real skill to even get past the first level. And I guess the reason being was I felt like, I guess this kind of harkens back to like Sanctuary RPG, where I didn't want like a roguelike that was just press A to like hit, or some basic mechanic where it's so boring that or like, well, it's not boring, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of combat systems that are so straightforward that there's very little decision making involved. And so with Sanctuary, I wanted like a complex battle system, and with Overture, I wanted a complex battle system where the player was forced to like run, to like dodge enemy projectiles, like tactically like getting close, and I don't know, just something that forced the player to use the game mechanics in order to survive, instead of just just hit them and then get hit back, and just like making it too straightforward.
Yeah, it doesn't really bother me that it's difficult, because I noticed the same thing with Sanctuary. I died several times. There's something about these roguelikes where, if you're playing Baldur's Gate or something like that and you die, it's a big deal, right? But with these games, you just, okay, I'll just create another warrior, and I can. I like the way you have the cache there, so you can, even if you die, you have some cash. Maybe you can upgrade to the next warrior. That's a nice system. It doesn't feel so painful. I noticed something about both of the games is that you can really sort of play them at two different levels. It seems like, right? You could be sort of casually play this, a few minutes here and there. But it also has a lot of depth. Both those games. Maybe Sanctuary. Would you say a little bit more? Maybe.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of stuff you can really delve into that game. There's a big wiki for Sanctuary. So that must be, again, quite quite a feat to appeal to sort of real casual players as well as some really hardcore types.
Yeah, I grew up playing Blizzard games, like Diablo, Warcraft, Starcraft, and I was really impressed by, their philosophy of, hey, this game should appeal to hardcore players, but be easy enough for casual players to just hop in and just hop out. So, I guess my whole career is just trying to emulate that Blizzard style of game design.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Blackshell Media, if you don't mind, the company, your publishing
Sure.
studio. So notice I think you're up to 55 games on Steam, or definitely over 50, right?
Yeah.
And it was quite the variety. I noticed there's some other roguelikes out there, but there's also some shoot-'em-up games. There's Hyperspace Invaders 2. Well, I know a lot of my viewers like the shoot-'em-up games, so I'll mention those. Another one was Void Invaders. And there was even one that really caught my eye, because I love those that tapeworm game, Little Snake. Notice you have one called Curvatron?
Oh, yeah.
It's just quite a smorgasbord of games there. How do you decide, like, okay, I'll publish that one, maybe not this one? What are your criteria?
Sure. So with Blackshell Media, we're basically just trying to work with developers who have games that they want to get to a larger audience, but they don't necessarily have the connections or experience to get as much sales as they would without partnering up with like a marketing company like us. So basically, we're trying to look for developers that have a lot of potential and are willing to improve the game. And I personally do design consultations with our partners, and we also have like a large feedback team and a couple of internal game designers. So it's all about games with high potential that the developer is willing to work with us in making it as polished as possible. And then we'll basically help them like along the way, like making trailers, writing copy for it, sending out press releases, contacting media influencers, journalists, YouTubers to basically just try to get the game to as large an audience as possible.
I think you're providing a very valuable service. I mean, I know lots of indie designers and developers, and a lot of these, very talented guys. They're very skilled, at coding and game design. But when it comes to marketing and getting like the word out, that's really where they have a lot of trouble, right? I mean, that's just when you look at Steam and you see all those games that are on there. I mean, what is there? I don't even know how many games are there. I mean, how do you get a game noticed with so much competition in just about any genre you can imagine?
Yeah, that's really tricky. I mean, as with all games that we publish, it's not a guarantee that the game's gonna blow up or the game's gonna get super popular. But it's all about trying to position it as best as possible so that there's potential for it to go viral or be played by like a bunch of YouTubers. And it's all about differentiating the game from the rest of the crowd. So when we publish a game, we're trying to figure out if the game has like a unique selling point or a unique selling proposition, and it's all about making it stand out by not competing with games that will overshadow it. So for example, with a game like Sanctuary RPG, it kind of stands in a league of its own. It's not like a worse other game or like a clone of like some other game. It's so, I guess, unique that no other game serves to overshadow it. So yeah, so I guess it's all about truly standing out from the clutter.
It sounds like trying to find a niche that hasn't been done to death. Or I like that sort of something unique about it. That I think I'm trying to remember who it was I had on the show. He was saying that one of his big things was always you could say for the first fill in the bullet point on the back of the box, right? For the first time ever, fill in the blank. I thought, wow, I don't know, that must be really challenging to try to come up with something like that would hasn't been done already.
Yeah, what's interesting though is that like the entire game doesn't have to be unique, just one part of it. Because like Sanctuary RPG, it's an RPG, it's a roguelike. Overture, it's it's like a bullet hell roguelike, but like for Sanctuary RPG's case, it was the world's first ASCII game on the Steam platform that was like full ASCII. So we doubled down on that.
Yeah, that's amazing to me. I mean, that was I figured there would be many, already, but wow. That must have gotten a lot of attention, helped it get a lot of publicity, just that fact alone.
Yeah, and for Overture, we doubled down on it being just like insane, like there's just so much going on, and it's just like chaotic, but at the same time, it's very strategic. So it's like it's kind of like a mix of like a roguelike game, but taken to the next level in terms of enemies and like dodging them, and just I don't know, it's just like
kind of reminds me of Robotron for some reason. You ever play that old arcade game?
I have not actually.
Well, just it's got that mechanic where you got separate firing and separate movement. I think the arcade one had 2 joysticks, as I recall. But that's what it feels like playing it to me, because you're just like, enemies can come from any direction, and it's very frantic. Fun, but it's definitely not it's not a game you play to relax.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's even that game though. It seems like it's fairly, there's a lot of action, but there's also quite a bit of depth. I noticed there too. You can really, develop the character, and there's all the stuff you can unlock. And how many characters does that game have that you can play?
Overture has 24 characters to unlock.
24 characters, wow. How long does it take to make something like that?
Overture took me, I think, a year and a half to actually fully create.
So out of all these other games on Blackshell Media, which are the most popular?
So I guess some of the most popular games that we have in our catalog is Sanctuary RPG, Overture, Dungeon Souls, and Zombie Party.
Yeah, I was looking at Zombie Party. That's kind of interesting. So what's the unique spin for that one?
So Zombie Party is, it's all about it's kind of like an acid trip almost, but at the same time, it's an acid trip that can be shared with friends, and it's like much safer than actually doing acid.
I have to take your word for that one. I noticed that you also do some game consulting. I guess that's what we've been sort of talking about here. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that, because as you probably know, I do work with a lot of student developers or students that want to go into game design, and a lot of those guys will have made little projects that they're working on. And, I'm never quite sure what to tell them, because on the one hand you don't want to discourage them, but on the other hand you can see that maybe they're going in probably not the best direction, or maybe they have too grandiose of a vision, or something like that. I mean, how do you be a really effective game consultant?
Sure. So I guess game design consultation is all about figuring out what the vision of the game designer is, and then working with them to make sure that they're going in a direction that's good for the game and also good for their mental health. Because sometimes the game designer will bite off more than they can chew, and then they'll get overwhelmed and they'll quit, which is horrible. And then sometimes a game designer will make like a game that's like super tiny in scope, and then they'll try to like release it onto Steam or something, and that's also like a no-go, because Steam gamers and PC gamers in general, most oftentimes they'll demand like a much more complex game with like awesome retention mechanics, awesome juice, awesome like
awesome
things
juice. What is that?
So like juice is like like flashy effects that captivate players' attention, because there's a lot of games that are made that don't really have that juice there, and then so players will get bored right away and they'll just stop playing. So yeah, I guess it's all about working with the designer and figuring out how they can get this product shipped without disappointing everyone.
So what does somebody need to have completed before they come to you? Do they need a prototype or just a game concept? I mean, what point do you pick up and start the consulting process?
Sure. So we actually don't accept concepts because like almost everyone has like game ideas, and even if you have like a huge game design document,
you must get so tired of that. I've got this great idea for a game.
Yeah, we actually get those emails quite a lot. Even if you have like an awesome idea, it's all about like sitting down and actually doing the work, which is super tedious sometimes, but also super rewarding. But as far as I guess them coming to us, we definitely need like a prototype. We need like to like learn more about the developer and basically try to assess whether the game is like feasible for them to like actually like complete, instead of, oh, this is just like some grandiose idea that I have.
Does it have that juice? Or does the juice come later? So what's in the pipeline? We talked about some of the stuff that's out there already. Do you have any big projects coming up, either publishing or developing?
Sure. So we actually have like a bunch of other projects lined up. One notable project we have coming up is called Third Eye, and it's basically kind of like a God of War kind of game where it's like action, hack and slash, but also with like awesome story elements and definitely a lot of juice.
And that's all for this week's episode. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Been a hellacious couple of weeks here. We're starting up our new semester, fall semester here at St. Cloud State. And as you can imagine, it's a very hectic time. Going to try to my best to get a new episode out pretty soon. Got a pretty exciting interview that seems to be lining up nicely. But if it's a while, don't panic. It's just me in the midst of my professorial duties, as it were. So hang in there. And as always, I want to thank you very much for your support of this show. It really means a lot to me, guys, especially when it's like this. And it's all I can do to get an episode out in almost a month rather than a week. The comments and the Patreon support, just all of that stuff that really makes a difference. It helps me get the energy and the motivation up to get these episodes out in a timely fashion. So thank you for all of your support. Also, thanks especially to you guys who are helping me find some people to interview, helping me do the legwork there. Stig, looking at you. Thank you very much for your support. All right, let's see. What about that news from the Matt Cave? Got a few news items here for you. The first is a bit of bad news. I don't know if you've been hearing about this alien signal that supposedly was detected. There's a lot of hype about it in the news. They thought this might be a signal from a very advanced alien civilization that had been detected. The scientists, though, were a little more hesitant about saying it was aliens for sure, and I'm sure they're glad about that now, because it turns out to be just a lame old Russian military satellite signal. So anyways, a false alarm, but nevertheless, I think it's so much fun to imagine, what would it be like if we really did detect one of these signals from some kind of civilization a lot more advanced than us. To me, that's the kind of stuff I like to fantasize and imagine. But anyway, unfortunately, this time it didn't pan out, but I don't want to give up hope, right? Another bit of news, slightly more positive. If you've been watching Stranger Things on Netflix, I'm sure a lot of you guys are into that. Well, now you can play a game based on it, at least a scene, at least a single scene. This is Infamous Quests. You might remember those guys. They did, what was the name of their game? Anyway, sort of King's Quest, Quest of Glory style stuff. they have recreated a scene from the show for you to play through. I thought that was pretty neat. I'll post a link to that in the show notes. All right, and finally, Defender of the Crown is coming to the ZX Spectrum, if you can believe this. Apparently, there was a commercial version that was intended for the ZX Spectrum, didn't get released for various reasons, but now there's a full version on its way, so you can finally play that ZX Spectrum version of Defender of the Crown. So I'll post a link to this. It was Indie Retro News where I got this information from. I'll post a link to them so you can see what they have to say about it. All right, I think that'll do it for the news. Let's see, what about that ale of the week? Well, this time I've got a Robusto root beer, Crusoe's Legacy. Crusoe's Legacy Robusto root beer, a gourmet soda, 100% real sugar. Now, they talk a little bit about Crusoe's Legacy. They say it's a tribute to the couple that set the standards that they continue to abide by. This is a WBC, Witt Beverage Company. And unfortunately, they don't say where they're located, so I really have no idea. Let's see. Nothing really unusual in the ingredients other than yucca concentrate, citric acid. Anyway, I thought it looked kind of interesting. Gourmet root beer. So let's get this open and see what it's all about. All right, so I got some of this Crusoe's Legacy here in the rather excellent drinking horn. And, you know, I don't know about you, when I was a kid, I just always liked the A&W root beer, just plain old A&W. It was always good enough for me back then. But now we're seeing all of this sort of gourmet, sort of micro root beer stuff. I think they're trying to take a page from that microbrew beer community. Anyway, this one definitely smells nice. It's got that sort of anise flavor, or anise scent that you would expect from a good root beer. Not a real overpowering aroma or anything though, so let's give it a taste. Well, this one's it's nice and smooth, good consistency on that. A little bit on the creamy side. What I'm really liking though is I'm really tasting that sort of root beer flavor, and not just sugar that you get with a lot of these, a lot of root beers. Actually, there's a nice aftertaste here too. Not sure, maybe it's that extract I was talking about from the ingredients. Anyway, it really, I gotta say, I really like the taste of this. Let me try it again. You know, what can I say? It's a really nice root beer. Even better than I was hoping for here. It's really smooth. It's got a nice sort of creamy consistency to it. It's sweet, but it's not overpowering, sugary sweet you might get with a lot of sodas. And you do taste that sort of root beer flavor that is the reason that you drink a root beer, right? So let me try it one more time here. Yeah, all in all, it's just a really good root beer. Definitely one of the better ones I've had. I don't know if I'd go so far as to say it's the best or not, but it's definitely up there. You know, I think if you want a good root beer, you can do a lot worse than this Crusoe's Legacy. Now, unfortunately, I have no idea where I got this thing from, so I think I might have been on vacation. But anyway, if you can find it, definitely pick it up. I think you will enjoy it. Anyway, I'm going to go a full 5 out of 5 on the Robusto root beer, Crusoe's Legacy. I think it's a really good choice, and I think you would enjoy it too. So 5 out of 5 for that. All right, so let's wrap this up with a quotation. And I was looking for quotes about motivation and sort of staying motivated to complete a project and all this stuff. And I found a kind of funny quote along those lines I wanted to share with you. And this is from a French author by the name of Jules Renard. Anyway, the quote goes something like this: "Laziness is nothing more than the habit of resting before you get tired." So think that over and see you guys next time.
whole of my database, collated every single option, and there are 3 realistic alternatives. 1, sit here and get blown up. 2, stand here and get blown up. 3, jump up and down, shout at me for not being able to think of anything, then get blown up.